Good evening. Welcome to tonight's Hamayan Parasha Shiur. This week's Parasha is the topic is why is Jerusalem not mentioned by name in Chumash? You know the story with the couple. This was pre-Corona days, and they come back from their holiday in Italy, and they're so excited. And someone asks the husband, "So, tell me about it." He said, "Oh, the restaurants, they were something special." "Wow, which restaurant do you go to?" So he says, "In Venice, there was this, it was just so amazing." What was the name? He says, flower. Give me a name of a flower. Daffodil? No. Come on, flower. You give flower. Tulip? No. Rose? Yes, Rose. What was the name of the restaurant? Sometimes there could be very important names, and unfortunately for this couple, the husband had forgotten not the name of the restaurant, but his wife's. In Chumash, it seems that we forget to mention the name Jerusalem, the holy city, the place where the Beit HaMikdash, the temple, would be. What happened? Why is it not mentioned? Now, we know in Nach, in the prophets, in Nevi'im and Ketuvim, it's mentioned many times. It's mentioned about 600 times. And Zion, which is another name normally for Jerusalem or for Eretz Yisrael, is mentioned, or for a part of the city of Yerushalayim, is mentioned about another 200 times. But in the Torah, it many times references Yerushalayim, but never by name. It's the place that I will choose, the place that I will show you. You know, there was an incident happened about 10 years ago. Chief Rabbi Yisrael Meir Lau visited the leading sheikh in Egypt and really for the Sunni world. And his name was, he passed away already, his name is Muhammad Sayyid Tantawi. And they're having a discussion, quite a pleasant discussion, this and that. And at the end, Rabbi Lau says to him, Sheikh Muhammad, thank you for your hospitality, and I'd like to return the favor and invite you to come join us to meet with me again in Jerusalem. And the Sheikh suddenly gets tense. He says, "No, I'm not going to go to Jerusalem until my passport is stamped by a Palestinian official, Palestinian government stamp, not an Israeli stamp. I'm not going to be meeting you there." And that set off a bit of a discussion. He says, "Why? My passport was stamped with an Egyptian stamp. What's wrong with an Israeli stamp?" He says, "Yeah, but you are thieves. You are usurpers. You stole our Palestinian land. It's Muslim territory." So he says, "Sheikh, I know you're a scholar besides of the Quran, also of the Tanakh." He had written a doctorate on comparing the Quran and the Tanakh, Lahavdil. "And tell me, how many times does it mention Jerusalem in the Tanakh?" And he knew more or less, about 600 times. "And how about in the Quran? How many times is it mentioned?" He was silent. The answer is 0. And only later, according to the vast majority of non-Muslim scholars, the holiness, so to speak, of Jerusalem started when there was a leader based in Syria and Damascus who wanted an area to claim as his holy territory. He didn't have control of Mecca and Medina, so there's a reference to a faraway mosque, and they associated that with Jerusalem. But there's no mention. It's certainly not important. Why then does Chumash not mention it? Let's look at our parasha. This is text 1. The pasuk says, to rest his name there. That's where you shall bring everything that I have commanded you. In other words, all sacrifices should be brought to that place, the place that I chose. Be careful. Maybe you will offer up your olah sacrifice. Wherever you see, not in the right place. Don't do that. Only in the place that Hashem chooses, one of your gates, that's where you should offer up sacrifices. Only in the place that Hashem chooses. Again, what is the place Hashem will choose? Jerusalem, Yerushalayim. Why is it not mentioned? Of course, as Rashi says, that in text 2, what is that place? It shall be the place, Rashi says, refers to the building of the Beit HaBechira, the chosen house, which is the temple, the Beit HaMikdash, in Jerusalem. Now, don't think that the Torah is averse to mentioning names of places by name. Actually, in the beginning of our Parasha, it does mention a place with a very specific name and delineates exactly where it is. It says that you're going to come into the land and you're going to offer a series of blessings and curses. The Pasuk says as follows: "V'nasata sabrach al har Gerizim," you should place the blessing on Mount Gerizim, meaning that you have the Kohanim in the middle, and they turn to Har Gerizim, and you have 6 tribes on Har Gerizim, and they say, "Blessed is the one who does such and such." Then they turn to the second mountain, Har Eval, Mount Eval, and say, "Cursed is the one who does such and such." So the pasuk continues, "V'saklala," and the curse, "Al Har Eval," on Mount Eval. These 2 mountains are across the Jordan. Far away, Derech Mevei HaShemesh, but where the sun sets, Be'eretz HaKanani, in the Canaanite land, the Yochim Arava, who sit in the Arava, Mul HaGilgal, opposite Gilgal, Eitzel, Elene Moreh, near the plains of Moreh. So the Torah gives very specific descriptions when it wants to about a place. It tells you exactly where to look. Why doesn't it do it about such an important place like Jerusalem? Okay. Now, maybe the answer is simply that it was unknown. Maybe it doesn't mention Jerusalem because it was just not an important city in that era. It was not a place, certainly, that these Bnei Yisrael, these Israelites who had lived, their forefathers had lived in Egypt for generations. They had just got out, they were living in the desert, and they weren't really familiar with the minor town that Jerusalem was at the time. But that's not true, because it was known. It was certainly known by Moshe and by many others. Let's look inside, and we'll see the Moreh Nevuchim, who asks this very question that we're asking, and says it was certainly known by Moshe and others, and therefore why does the Torah not mention the place? Text 4. The glaring omission of Jerusalem. I have no doubt, says Rambam, that Moshe and many others were aware of the location which our patriarch Avraham Avinu had designated as a special place of divine service. As Avraham had declared following the Akedah, the binding of Isaac, on this mountain Hashem shall be seen by our service here. Why then was the Torah vague and only called it the place which Hashem shall choose? Why not say Jerusalem? Avraham had said, this is the place where you are going to daven to Hashem, this is where you're going to pray, this is where you're going to serve Hashem, this is Har Yeroeh, the mountain where both I have seen Hashem and Hashem will be seen through this mountain. So it was a place that definitely sun would know. Well, I can suggest another answer. Maybe there is nothing special about Jerusalem. It was chosen. They needed to choose somewhere. We need to have a central place, and they chose Jerusalem. Not that it has intrinsic specialty. It was a practical choice. It was between the north and the south. It's on a mountain. They like to have mountains, good location, good, feels elevated, which represents spirituality. It was convenient. Maybe because none of the tribes had lived there until then, when Dovid came and said, "Oh, this is a new city. No one's been living here. I'll choose the city as a central city." Like Canberra. What was Canberra? It's somewhere between Melbourne and Sydney. New place. But that's not true. Let's look in the introduction to Sefer Chinuch. Sefer Chinuch, the book of education, was written by Rabbi Halevi. He wanted to keep his son occupied. His son was bored on Shabbos afternoons. There must have been some sort of corona virus at the time. But his son was bored. His son was running around. He wanted to give him something to do, so he wrote a book. It was actually a brilliant sefer, and its popularity has continued until today. And it goes through a brief description and reason for each mitzvah of the 613. In his introduction, he says, this is text 5, the same applies in the world, in the globe. There's a special place. There's the chosen place. Hashem knows that the chosen place is Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel. And therefore he sets the chosen nation there in that land. In this good land, the most choicest place, Shiur, which is Jerusalem. Okay, that's why it was chosen as the central place for Torah and for Avodah, for serving Hashem through the sacrifices, the Beit HaMikdash, the temple, and through prayer. And through that, the entire world is blessed. Okay, so it's not just a technical, this is the central place. No, there's something special about it. You know, there are some places that this is the best place if you want to, grow avocados. There are certain places that just as physically, different places have different qualities, and you could accomplish different things in different places. Actually, there's been many studies that show that whether you live in a warm climate or a cold climate affects your temperament as well. Whether you live near beaches or near forests, all these things affect the people. So spiritually as well, there's a difference whether you live in a special spiritually charged place like Jerusalem, or in another place, and it was chosen because it was the most suitable place spiritually. If so, why is there no mention? If the place is so important, say, when you arrive at Jerusalem, that's where you'll bring your sacrifices. Now, this actually affected the future history of the Jewish people. There's a pasuk in Tehillim, in Psalms, in chapter 132, that Dovid, King David, this is his oath and text 6, King David's oath and confusion. So David said, I swore to Hashem, not the love of Yaakov, vow to the mighty one of Jacob. And what was his vow? Im avei ba'el beisi, that I shall not come into the tent of my house. Im el al eretz Yisrael, I'll not go up on the bed that was spread for me, until I find the place where, as Metzudas explains, until I find the place where the Beit HaMikdash is meant to be built. So in other words, he had some sort of confusion, according to the Parasha, where exactly the Beit HaMikdash would be built, and we know that he studied a whole night with Shmerling, with the prophet Shmuel, to work out exactly where to build the Beit HaMikdash. This was something that was not so clear. Why did the Torah make it clear, say Yerushalayim, and even specify the exact location, exactly which mountain, exactly where? Well, perhaps I'll just share a couple of ways that we see how Yerushalayim is just in a very obvious way. We don't have gorges that can measure spiritual power. But what we can see is a few things. Number one, we see that this is the most discussed and argued over piece of real estate in the world. Okay? It's a few, number of miles, number of kilometers. There's a lot bigger areas, a lot more important cities economically. But this is the number one actually discussed and argued over piece of real estate. Number two, it's holy to so many faiths. We know that many faiths have their holy place, but only Yerushalayim is holy to and important to many faiths. Why? Because there's something special there, and therefore everyone subconsciously decide to cling to that. Another interesting point is, from the time that the Romans conquered it, it was never vibrant. The Romans tried to build a city there, Aelia Capitolina. Nothing special. And every empire and every culture every land that conquered the city, whether it was the Parthians or the Byzantines or the Egyptians under Saladin, or the Crusades or the Ottomans or the British, whoever it was, they all controlled it, but it always stayed basically desolate, very small amounts of people, unproductive. And then, in the time of the first Beis HaMikdash, major center. Second Beis HaMikdash, major center. And now, Baruch Hashem again, a major center under Jewish rule. And one more point. There's this concept of the Jerusalem syndrome. So you could explain it psychologically, but perhaps it's also this heightened spiritual energy that can disturb people sometimes. It could be a little too powerful. So we see that Yerushalayim is something so special, and actually this point, this idea that it will only be successful under Jewish rule is mentioned by the Parasha. This is in text 7. I'm going to read it. The Parasha says it's based on a story in Marcus. Rabbi Akiva and his colleagues were walking near the Temple Mount, and they saw, this was after the destruction. The Romans had destroyed the Beit HaMikdash. And they saw that there was foxes running across. They saw there were foxes on the Holy of Holies, the Kodesh HaKadoshim area. And they were so upset, and they were crying. Rabbi Akiva's laughing, smiling. And they asked him, why are you crying? Why are you laughing? He says to them, well, why are you crying? They say, what do you mean? The Holy of Holies, and now there's foxes running over it? He says, that's why I'm laughing. He says, just like the prophecy that foxes would be running over the Temple Mount was fulfilled, so too the prophecy, the Nevuah, that Yerushalayim will again be a city of young and old, everyone walking around happy and peaceful. That too will be fulfilled. So the Parasha says, what's Rabbi Akiva saying? I'm happy that the foxes are running over it. He's not just happy because just like this was fulfilled, so to the other one. But also he's happy, I'll just paraphrase, that there are only foxes in it. He says, look, as soon as the enemies conquer the city, it goes down to nothing. There are no people here. There are foxes here. Doesn't that show us something special? Hashem only lets this city flourish under Jewish rule. As the Parasha puts it, when the Kutim were here, nothing grows. The Romans are here, nothing grows. That's why Rabbi Akiva is smiling as well. There's a story in 1948, when the British left, the Jewish people declare independence, and it wasn't all rosy afterwards. The Independence War was a terrible war in terms of the Karbonos. It was a success in terms of victory, but about 1% of the Yidden, of the Jewish people of Israel, were killed in that war, and there was real doubts whether they would come out of it without being destroyed, especially at the beginning. And the UN basically communicated that Jerusalem is surrounded. The Arabs have control of the Latrun. You're not going to be able to get supplies in. We'll help you evacuate the people. Ben Gurion's thinking what to do, and he asks the rabbis of Yerushalayim, please, what do you think? Should we evacuate Yerushalayim? The situation is desperate, on the other hand, to evacuate Yerushalayim right after declaring independence. And they called a meeting, this one, that one. Everyone was scared. They didn't want to say either way because this could cause a lot of dead. On the other hand, to evacuate Yerushalayim. Finally, Rav Bengis, who's the Av Beis Din of the Eid HaCharedis in Yerushalayim, he says, no, do not evacuate. It'll be okay. Why? Because we see that the prophets talk of 2 destructions, not of 3 destructions, and therefore now it will be fine. Either way, let's now come to the first answer to our question, and then we'll come to a second answer as well. Now, this is in text 8. Text 8 says, this is from Moreh Nevuchim, the Rambam's Guide to the Perplexed again. The wisdom in not divulging the location of the holy city. The Rambam says, leaving the location unspecified had 3 purposes. Firstly, so that the foreign inhabitants shouldn't fight extra hard over it, knowing that this place is the ultimate Jewish destination. In other words, if we would say, hey, other nations, the place we're seeking and we're looking for is Jerusalem, then they would put up extra guards, they would fight harder, it would cause more Jewish soldiers to die. And therefore, that's not something we want to do. We're not going to divulge the location. Number 2, secondly, so that the foreign inhabitants don't destroy the city before the Jewish people liberate it. When they see that they know that this is the city we want, they'll just smash down the whole city. We don't want that either, so we're not going to say which city it is. And thirdly, which Rambam says, thirdly and most, this prime holy city. That is why the Torah instructed the heart. Number 2, so they don't destroy the city before we get there. And number 3, so that the Shvatim, the different tribes among the Jews, don't all fight. Yerushalayim should be our territory, no our territory. So we're not going to say where the holy city will be until after we divide the tribes and after there is a king who unifies all the people under one rule. And then we can say, because then everyone feels more united and there's singular rule, there won't be fights. Now, this idea of putting a veil, and this protects Yerushalayim both from the foreign inhabitants, the idolaters at the time, as well as helping with internal Jewish unity, also relates to the idea of Torah Shebaal Peh. We know that Hashem gave us the Torah in 2 parts. Number 1 is the written Torah, and number 2, the oral Torah. Why is it that Hashem gave these 2 parts? Why isn't everything written down? There are a number of reasons, and I actually spoke about it at a recent Shiur. I spoke about it in Devarim, addressed this a little. But now I'm going to share another reason I didn't mention then. And this comes from Yalkut. This is text 9, if you have it, Torah's veil. Yalkut says, Hashem saw into the future that the idolaters would one day translate the Torah into Greek, right? That was the first translation of Torah into Greek. They will say, we are the Israelites. We are the Hebrews. We have the Torah. So Hashem tells those nations, is not clearly specified, not clearly stated in the written Torah. So in other words, even if foreign peoples say, I've got the Torah, they only have one part, they only have the written law, but they don't understand it. They don't have the interpretation which comes with the oral law. And therefore, just as the holy city is kept concealed, kept hidden, so too the true meaning of the Torah is concealed, right? Where do you circumcise? Do you cut the lips or the heart or perhaps another organ? The Torah does not state clearly. Where do you, what do you blow on Rosh Hashanah? The Torah doesn't say that either clearly. And we've mentioned many examples. So it's not clear, again, to protect it for the Jewish people. Now, this is all one answer, which is the first answer, the basic answer, that the reason why Yerushalayim is not mentioned in the Torah is to keep it protected, both from foreigners, we shouldn't have difficult battles, and also from within the Jewish people, there shouldn't be internal quarrels about it. Now we're going to go on to a deeper answer, but first with the story. There was a rabbi called Reb Chaim Otner, and he was educated in yeshivas in pre-war Europe and in Poland, Lithuania, and then moved to London before the war, thank God, and he and his family survived. Eventually came to America. He was one of the Rosh Yeshiva in Yeshivas Chavetz Chaim, and he didn't come from a Chabad background at all, but he had a question: should he stay there in New York, teaching in the yeshiva, or should he move to Los Angeles, become a community rabbi then? He wasn't sure what to do. He ended up meeting the Rebbe, and then he was very shaken by the experience, and that developed a closeness. Now, one time he was talking with the Rebbe, and the Rebbe asked him, "How's your son going?" And unfortunately, his son was in a very difficult space in terms of his relationship with Judaism, and the parents basically had given up on him having any connection. They thought it was very probable that he would intermarry and he would leave any relationship with Yiddishkeit. And they said, and they're very upset. The Rebbe says to them, his shidduch is waiting for him in Eretz Yisrael. You've got to somehow get him to go to Eretz Yisrael. And they tried this, they tried that. He wasn't interested. They didn't really have any close family there. They tried different ways to get him to go. He just wasn't interested. They went back to the Rebbe and said, "We really tried. We can't get him to go to Israel. He's just not interested." The Rebbe said, "If so, Eretz Yisrael will have to come to him." Okay, strange. Anyway, Rebbetzin Otner is going to a jewelry shop shortly afterwards, and in Los Angeles, and there's a young lady serving her. She hadn't seen her in that shop before. She asks, she says, "Yeah, well, I'm just visiting from Israel. So while I'm here for a couple of weeks. This is my uncle's shop, so I'm working in the shop." She says, "Oh, wow." Anyway, they talk, and she starts to get a sense that this young lady would be very suitable for her son. And she arranges somehow for the son to meet her, convince him, "I met someone who will be really good," or whatever the case was. They ended up meeting, and they really hit off with each other and were, of course, afterwards engaged and married. Now, this idea, if he's not going to go to Israel, then Eretz Yisrael will have to come to him, is something which is not just a story, but very relevant to all of us. And that is because we all have to, either we're living in Eretz Yisrael, or we make where we are Yerushalayim. We bring Yerushalayim to us. Listen to this. This is from Sefer Chaim, written by the brother of the Maharal of Prague. And he says, this is a translation. One who constantly anticipates the redemption and has his eyes and heart set on the redemption constantly. God forbid, chas v'shalom, to say that he is like an idolater for living in the diaspora, right? We know Rashi says, quotes from the Gemara, that whoever lives in the diaspora, it's as if they're an idolater. So he says, if someone is focused on the redemption, on Mashiach, on Eretz Yisrael, then they're not the chas v'shalom, God forbid, to say that they're like an idolater. On the contrary, in truth, that person is living in the Holy Land. In prayer, right, when we daven, we face Eretz Yisrael. And we direct our mind toward Yerushalayim. And at that moment, we are considered to actually be there. So when it says whoever lives in Chutz La'aretz, in the diaspora, is as if they're an idolater, that does not include someone who is really living in Eretz Yisrael wherever they actually are physically. It is for this reason that Jerusalem is not mentioned explicitly in Chumash, says Sefer Chaim, only hinted at with the term the place that Hashem shall choose. This is because every place is designated and prepared for Hashem, and every place is included in the term the place that Hashem shall choose. Okay? Niku'ula of Yeshua, chapter 1. Now, this helps us with understanding a deeper answer. Why is Yerushalayim not mentioned in Chumash? It's not just because, otherwise it would cause more war with the inhabitants, or because there would be fights among the tribes. But there's a very deep lesson here. The lesson is, where is the place that Hashem shall choose, that you can make a holy place? Where you are. Make where you are a holy place. And specifically, make where you are Yerushalayim. What's special about Yerushalayim? Where does this name Yerushalayim come from? So we know that there are two names in Chumash for Yerushalayim before the name Yerushalayim began. One name is Har Yera'eh. When Avram goes up for the Akedat Yitzchak, the binding of Yitzchak, he calls it Har Yera'eh, or Har Moriah, which can be linked as a similar meaning, Yera'eh. And then we have the Yerah. Normally, Yerah comes from the term revere as well. And then Shalem means complete. It says that Malki Tzedek, king of Shalem, met Avraham on the way back from his battle against Sodom, and he offered him gifts to say, although you killed the people of Sodom, who are my descendants, I understand. They were bad people, they had captured Lot, and I have no hard feelings. And there, Malki Tzedek, who's also his otherwise known, as Rashi quotes from the Medrash, as Shem, the son of Noach. So here's the king, the leader of Shalem. Shalem is the same city as Har Yera'eh, where this Mount Yera'eh is. When we put those two together, Yera'eh, Shalem, we get to Yerushalayim. Now, what does the name Yerushalayim mean? Yirah is reverence. Shalem, complete reverence. So what the message that we're getting is, where is the place that I can have utter reverence for Hashem? Where is the place that I can feel I'm in sanctified territory? That's wherever you are right now. Text 11 that I've sent out. It's from the Ramah, right at the beginning of Shulchan Aruch. Right, Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law, was written by Rabbi Yosef Karo, and then the Ramah, who was his contemporary, a bit younger, but his contemporary, added notes. Rabbi Yosef Karo is the Sephardic leading rabbi 500 years ago, and the Ramah, a leading Ashkenazic rabbi, also 500 years ago, approx, or just under, and together we have the Shulchan Aruch, which includes both Ashkenazic and Sephardic custom, and all future halachic works take them strongly into account, and they're the basis for most future halachic works and subsequent halachic works. Anyway, right at the beginning of Shulchan Aruch, what does the Ramah tell us? He says we have to always have this Yira Shalem, Yerushalayim. He doesn't use that word, but we always have to have this complete reverence of Hashem and realize, where is Hashem? Right here, right now. And I'll read his words. Shivisi Hashem lenegdi samid. I always place Hashem before me. Hu klal gadol b'Torah. This is an important rule in the Torah, an important principle. Uva malais hatzadikim, and in the qualities of the righteous. Right? There's a song about this too. Some of you may know. And then he continues and says, Ki ein yeshivas adam t'nuosav asakav, that a person's living and the way he behaves and his affairs are not the same. When he's alone at home. Ki yeshivase t'nuosav asakav, like the way he conducts himself, he lives, and his affairs, when he's in front of an important king. The way he speaks, the way he opens his mouth is not the same. When it's just among his family, and the ones close to him, his relatives, the way that's not at all like how he would speak when he's in front of a king. So how much more so when a person puts to his heart that the great King Hashem, Hashem Melech Haaretz K'vodei, who the entire globe is full of His glory. Omed Alav, Hashem is standing right here in front of me. V'roya b'maisav, looking at His deeds. K'moshe ne'amar, as the verse says, Im yisasa ish b'misarim, even if a person is hiding in hidden places, v'ani lo yareno, will Hashem not see him? Miyad yagieh elav hayir v'achna, straight away that person will feel this great sense, powerful feeling of reverence and subjugation, feeling small, b'pachad Hashem yisparach, in dread in front of Hashem, and feeling small and embarrassed, so to speak, in front of Hashem. So we've got to bring this Yira Shalom, this complete reverence, wherever we are, right? When you're at the kotel, I would imagine, it's not a time, you're not going to check your phone and to see how the share market is going, or to check the footy scores or whatever. It's a place where hopefully you'll be a little bit focused. You're not going to, sort of lay down there in a hammock and eat your burger. It's a place where it's somewhere special, it's somewhere holy, it's somewhere where we've got to be focused. I'm right in Hashem's presence. So where is that? That is everywhere, wherever we are. That wherever we are is Jerusalem, and we have to realize that and make wherever we are the place that Hashem chose. To conclude with the story. The First World War created great upheaval, and then in Russia, immediately following that, there was the communist revolution. The government moved from czar to democracy to anarchy with all different factions, and then the communists, and within the communists, different factions, until they took over, and there was a lot of trouble there too. But within this, during the First World War, many Jewish communities had to flee and move, and among them was the Rabbi Rashab, who fled and ended up in Rostov. And he was living on the first floor, upstairs, and downstairs underneath him, there was this wicked anti-Semitic Russian general. Anyways, so it was before Pesach, and they had tried to ship their Pesach ware, their kitchenware, and it hadn't arrived in time. So he had to kasher the kitchen in order to use for Pesach as well. And his kashering it, and is of course part of kashering is with boiling water, and is pouring lots and lots of boiling hot water everywhere. And his wife Rebbetzin says, "Be careful. This might aggravate the general downstairs. We've got to be careful." Right? He was a big anti-Semite. If he would hear these noises, and even worse, maybe there'd be some water staining, or he would be fuming, and he could cause them a lot of trouble. The Rebbe Rashab responded, Shall we be more afraid of the one below than the one above? Right? Yes, there's this general below. We don't want to aggravate him. But at the same time, and much more, who is there to be afraid of? Hashem. Nowadays we're very much into loving approach, and that's good. We should be into the loving approach. That's right, especially for nowadays. But at the same time, we have to realize that it's not just, I love fish means, well, if you love fish, why are you eating fish? You don't love fish, you love yourself. So love, when we love something, we can just sort of feel very comfortable and we can just take it over and use it how we want to use it. When there's reverence, respect, that means we have to think of the other, not just imagine it the way we want. And I never would have thought that you had a different view than me. This is just obviously the nice, fun thing. Oh, no, actually, for me, that's not fun. I like something different. So that's what reverence is about. And that's Yerushalayim. We have to bring Yerushalayim wherever we are so that we're more aware, more conscious, and have more reverence, more concerned about the one above, Hashem, more than the one below, or materialism below us. That's why it says the place that Hashem will choose doesn't limit it to Yerushalayim, because even if we're not there, make where you are that holy place.